Today I thought I would talk about cinema cameras that I have in my collection and how some of the cameras that I have in my collection are kind of representative of some of the steps that the industry took as it moved forward from celluloid film into digital cinema. It's kind of a hobby of mine to, as you probably know, if you've watched any of my channel, to buy, own, and use some of the best cameras that have been made since the digital cinema revolution, irregardless of whether or not they're relevant in today's technological landscape. So right now I'm shooting on the Red One MX, which was introduced in 2009. Prior to this version of the camera was the Red One with the Mysterium sensor that was released in 2007. This was a very significant step in the development of the digital cinema industry. It really did set the stage for other cameras that came after it. It's actually been one of the cameras I've been most interested in getting for many years is one of the early Reds, but I've kind of shied away from the original Red One just because of some of its limitations in terms of the sensitivity to light of the sensor, the original sensor. It really made it in many ways incompatible with other cameras. Because of the amount of light that it needed, it was difficult for you to balance that sensor with other sensors on the same scene using the same lighting. So the Red One MX uses the Mysterium X sensor, which was an upgrade from the original Mysterium sensor, and was used in other cameras like the Epic MX and I believe the Scarlett MX as well. So that the sensor itself was carried through into the next generation of Red cinema cameras and was quite a workhorse in the late 2000s and to the early 2010s. So this cinema camera that we're shooting on right now was introduced in 2009. And some of the features that were shot on it were the Social Network in 2010, and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was shot in 2011. So fairly early in the digital cinema revolution, this camera was being used. And as we've seen in some of my previous videos, it's got a beautiful image, almost right out of camera. It's got quite a unique look. Straight out of camera is a very usable image. Following the Red One MX was the next in my collection is the Arri Alexa Classic, which came out also in 2010, so a year after the Red One MX. And the Arri Alexa Classic, you've probably seen if you've been watching anything on my channel. I've used it for lots of videos. It's just got a beautiful image, very easy image to grade. Really, a lot of the times all I'm doing is slapping a Rec 709 LUT onto the footage and then using curves to grade it. For me, the image coming out of camera, the skin tones, the highlight roll off, all of these are really beautiful in the Arri Alexa Classic. And in my last video comparing the Red One MX to the Arri Alexa Classic, you could see there's a little bit of a difference in the way that the images looked, but both of them were beautiful images. And I found that in the comparison video that I made, that there were certain frames that I preferred from the Arri Alexa, but also there were certain frames that I compared from the Red One MX. So those early cameras, 2009, 2010, I wouldn't say they match up really well. I think it would be difficult to grade them, especially skin tones, and get like a uniform look with the two cameras. So I'm not sure if it's a great idea to use them as an A and B camera together. But as far as just the images that each of the cameras produces, both of them are fantastic. I would say that, and I'm pretty sure the specs would back this up too, that the Arri Alexa Classic does maintain a wider usable dynamic range than the Red One MX. But the Red One MX just has such a beautiful image that it kind of makes up for potentially that little bit of a lack in dynamic range. So that's the second camera historically in my collection. The next camera in my collection would be the Sony FS700. So the FS700 was not a flagship camera. I believe at the time that the FS700 was released, which was 2012, Sony F55 was a camera that was being used on, I believe, some feature films approximately around the time that the FS700 came out. But as far as the FS700 goes, it was more of a commercial camera for shooting commercial advertisements, and it was really well known for its ability to shoot high speed, and that was sort of its trick that it did, was high frame rates. It was launched as a 1080p camera with a 4K sensor, and the ability to later on use that 4K sensor. And when it finally did get the ability to record 4K RAW onto external recorders, that's when the camera really got its legs and fully developed into a fantastic image making machine. I don't know if it was ever used to shoot a feature film. I think there was a couple of feature films shot on it, but it wasn't meant for specifically feature length film shooting. It did have the capability to do it, but at that time there was already the Arri Alexa, and the Red cameras were out, probably the newer iterations of each of those. So those were the ones that were getting used in feature films, and the FS700 was now starting to become a little bit more affordable for the prosumer market, because I believe the FS700 was in around the $10,000 range, which was a fairly reasonably priced camera compared to the Arri Alexa, which I believe was in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, and then the Red One MX, which was like around $35,000 as well. So now we're getting into a pretty good image in 2012, 2013, 2014, when the FS700 got 4K capabilities, trickling down into more of the commercial marketplace, not so much the home marketplace at that point, but definitely becoming more accessible to the industry as a whole. The next camera that I sort of have in my collection that was sort of a big, I think, democratizing camera in digital cinema is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera OG. And this is a camera that I have a great deal of affinity towards. And if you've watched my channel, I have lots of videos using the Blackmagic Pocket OG, and then also talking about that camera. It's just a beautiful little camera, and particularly in terms of the type of image and the type of workflow that it brought to the masses, like being around I think it was around $1,300 or $1,400 Canadian, so right around $1,000 US when it was launched in 2013. So roughly a tenth of the price of an FS700 shooting internal RAW, cinema DNG, as well as ProRes, a few different flavors of ProRes. The camera had some serious capability in a tiny, tiny body, a body the size of which we really haven't ever seen again, other than in cameras like, which I will talk about later, the Sigma FP, which gets close to it. But really, anybody that's used and held the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera OG knows that it is remarkably small and hand-holdable. It does suffer from having no stabilization in body, but that was easily remedied by using optically stabilized lenses, such as the Panasonic Lumix 12 to 35, which is a fantastic pairing with the OG, giving you approximately a 35 to 10, around 100 millimeter focal range equivalency with that really tiny sensor. It's a true Super 16 size sensor, which also kind of makes it really special, being that all the other cameras that I've talked about so far, the Red One MX, the Arri Alexa Classic, and the Sony FS700 were all Super 35 sensors, and that was like really the professional standard going back for decades. Most Hollywood features have been shot on Super 35. So now here we have a little camera in the Pocket OG that is Super 16 camera, very small, very portable, with a workflow that's essentially the same as these higher end cinema cameras, and shooting into a RAW format or a 10-bit ProRes format that are quite beautiful and very gradable. So now we have a camera that is truly capable of shooting a film. Now the next in my collection would be the Sigma FP, and this is a beloved camera. Obviously the Sigma FP, the big thing about it is that it's a full frame 35 millimeter sensor, which differentiates it from all the previous cameras on my list of cameras that I own, being that, again, the Alexa, the Red One MX, and the FS700 are all Super 35 sensors, and then the OG, Pocket OG, is a Super 16 sensor. Now we're going to the FP, which is a full frame sensor, and it's a beautiful sensor. And it was a further democratizing of commercial full frame videography at a very affordable price point. Definitely kind of in that prosumer range price point, whereas the Pocket OG was definitely more of the consumer market. Pretty much anybody could have afforded a Pocket OG. It was roughly around $1,000 US. So the Sigma FP right now in the Canadian market, you can buy them for as low as, I've seen one recently listed for $1,200. I don't think it came with a ton of extras or accessories, but still, just to get the body, maybe a L mount to EF converter, you could get started fairly inexpensively. The Sigma FP was recently discontinued, although I think there still is stock in many stores, so it's not listed as discontinued everywhere. The Sigma Japan website, it's listed as discode. And then the final camera that I have in my collection that is a historically important in the digital cinema marketplace is the Red Komodo OG. So I still have the Red Komodo OG. I bought it before the one that I purchased originally. You'll see there's videos on my channel about the cheapest OG Komodo on YouTube. I originally bought that Komodo very inexpensively because it had a blow-in SDI port. I then sold it for the amount of money that I had purchased it for, and then quickly repurchased another Komodo. After I sold it, I just regretted selling it. It's because it is such a beautiful image coming out of that camera. And the form factor of the Komodo OG, the original Komodo, is really cool. Like that cube form factor. It's really riggable, but even more than that, it's actually quite transportable. Like you can take it with you. You can get beautiful images. Obviously not to the extent of like something like the FP or the Pocket OG. Like those are very pocketable cameras. But the Komodo is the next step up. It's a 6K RAW image, Red Code RAW. I mean, Red Code RAW is such a great format. It's about the size and weight of a ProRes file, but has such great ability. So the Komodo, I think, further democratized and really brought a professional feature-length film capable camera. Not to say that you couldn't shoot feature-length film, like I say, on the OG or on Sigma FP. People have done it, definitely. But those cameras are much better as like walk-around cameras, in my opinion. That's what I love them for, is the ability to have like a cinema camera in your pocket that you can walk around and get fantastic, beautiful images for just like home movies. Whereas the Komodo, it's next level. Like you could definitely easily shoot a feature-length film. Workflow is exactly like what you would be using like an Alexa or the Red One. Any cinema camera, it would fit right in. And the image is extremely gradable. File sizes are reasonable. I mean, when you're shooting 6K, it is pretty big. Media is expensive for them. I think that was some of the bigger improvements that were made on the Komodo X, which is also a lovely camera. I'd love to have one someday. But right now I'm happy to have it because it's the most modern and capable camera, having come out in 2020. So a year after the Sigma FP, and really being still a current camera. People are moving away from it now. Anyways, that's my sort of overview of my collection of digital cinema cameras that sort of span a good percentage of the history of digital cinema, and really thankful and grateful for the opportunity to own all of these cameras and not have, like, because they're so relatively inexpensive nowadays. It's not a massive investment. I really do make videos that I hope will be helpful to our community of YouTube filmmakers. And really my intent is to give back for all of the information and all of the knowledge that I've gained over the years watching YouTube. I hope if I could just give a little bit back to the community, that's really my goal. So thanks again. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you again on the next one. Bye for now.